Okay, recording started, and here we go. Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are logging in.
Yeah,
How's
let us know
everybody
in the
doing
chat.
today? Yeah, please use the chat and tell us where you are logging in from. You can type down the city, state, and also if you are in school right now, just mention your school name. Let's see if you find some schoolmates here.
Yeah,
Oh,
let us know if you're in university, working, new grad, whichever.
so we have Berkeley, Hyderabad, Dubai, San Diego, San Francisco, New York City, Pittsburgh. Oh, many people from America on a Saturday morning. Los Angeles. Nice. And if you know our speakers, use the name and use the hashtag. Which of the speakers you are most excited to hear from? You can use their name. Hashtag David, hashtag Chris, hashtag Melanie, hashtag Jerry, hashtag Athena. Oh, wow. All of them. Sounds good. We are going to wait a few more minutes until everybody kind of joins our panel, and then we'll begin with our talented panelists today.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I apologize, I'm 2 minutes late, but I just came from a Consulting panel. If anyone hasn't heard of Consulting yet, get on LinkedIn, go search up Consulting, hit them up. They're amazing. But yeah, firstly, I want to give a huge thank you to our panelists that are here today for joining us, because we have a huge community here at Product Buds that are so curious about what the life of an APM is like, how they can get into APM roles, you know, what the application process and interview process looks like and all of that. So before we get started, can everyone put in the chat, like, what kind of companies are you looking to become product managers at? Whether you're looking to become a PM intern or a new grad PM in like an APM role, like drop in the chat, like what companies you're interested in. And if you see someone that wants to work at the same company as you, hit them up, do mock interviews with each other, and also hit up our speakers on LinkedIn as well, because they all could, you know, give you the inside look. And if you build a relationship with them, you could potentially ask for a referral as well. So yeah, I'm looking at the chat right now. And oh my gosh, I see Microsoft, Salesforce, Spotify, LinkedIn, Uber, Lyft, Disney, LinkedIn, accounting, RPM at Facebook. Wow. You all have such great goals, and I'm really excited to see you all continue to build up your PM skills and knowledge to be able to land PM jobs at these companies. So awesome that you're all tuning in, 103 of you tuning in on a Saturday. Wow, I love that. So yeah, I'll pass the mic to Darsh now for an introduction of the event.
Thank you, Grace. And everybody, thank you so much for coming down. As I said, good morning, good afternoon, good evening for wherever you are logging in. And also a fun fact, Product Buds just crossed 4,500 followers on LinkedIn. So thank you so much. If you feel you have got something out of the community, feel free to use Zoom reactions for claps. And to Grace's point, all our panelists are great product managers, associate product managers, and feel free to follow them on LinkedIn, because several of these are also LinkedIn influencers. They kind of post a lot of good content and some really good advices. And definitely all of you would benefit a lot from them. So before we begin, just a few things about Product Buds. Product Buds, as most of you already know, but just to reiterate, is a community of budding product managers and mentors. So what we try to do is we basically try to create that sense of community for everybody who's preparing for PM roles, associate product manager roles, or even trying to get to know, like, after you become a PM, how do you go about and navigate your role. And we have some amazing mentors in the community. I'm sure you guys would have heard about Project Jam. So feel free to kind of join Product Buds. One of my teammates would mention the link in the chat. But let's begin. We are at time here. And I'd love to introduce an amazing panel that we have here today. Panelists, feel free to just unmute yourself and say hi when I call out your name, just so that people know where you are. So first of all, we have Christopher Larry, or Chris. He's an APM at Salesforce, and surprisingly, he's part of the first APM cohort at Salesforce. Hi, Chris.
Hey everyone, glad to be here with the Product Buds community.
Sounds good. Next up, we have Athena, who is a product manager at Microsoft, and I think she's working on Adobe Creative Cloud and Microsoft platform.
Hi, everyone. I'm a program manager on the panel. So thank you for helping me out. I don't sound like a APM at all, but in Microsoft, all PMs are called program managers. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you so much for telling us that, Athena. Next up, we have David Kai, and many of you already know him. He has been known for giving some great tips on LinkedIn. David is an APM at Yahoo. Hey, David.
Hey guys, yeah, excited to be here and excited for this panel.
Sounds good. Next up, we have Jerry Registry. Jerry is an APM intern at Google. Hey, Jerry.
Hey everyone, super psyched to be here.
And last but definitely not least, my fellow Yellow Jacket, Melina. She's an APM at LinkedIn who recently graduated from Masters in Computer Science and an MBA. And LinkedIn has been an holy grail for so many people this pandemic. Hi, Melanie.
Hi everyone, super glad to be here as well and to share my experience with you all.
Sounds good. Well, to start off and some event agenda, we'll be starting off and asking our panelists few of the very common APM recruiting or APM new grad PM related questions. And I would highly advise you to take some notes as you hear them tell about things, because these are some things that I wish I knew when I started out my product journey. And in the next half of the event, we'll be taking questions from the audience. So one of my teammates would be sending out a link to our Slido Q&A. Feel free to log in there and submit your questions fast, because as early you submit, you might get more upvotes and better probability of your question being asked. So no longer any wait. We'll start off with the question for our panelists. If you'll be able to illustrate your journey into product management and tell us how you navigated into PM. And to start us off, I'll start with Chris. Let's hear from you.
Yeah, so I'm Chris. I was always interested in technology, math, science growing up. But I think when I transitioned to product, I was very late and I didn't think it was something I really planned for. It happened. So I had a lot of software internships in college, studied electrical engineering, computer science, data science. So I always thought I'd have a technical role. But the more I was in industry at other companies, the more I realized, it's not about the technology. It's about how you apply the technology to solve a problem for a specific set of people. From there, just sort of looked in at other roles and saw who's really working on that problem. And I noticed it's always the PM. So junior year of college, I got an internship with Salesforce in the first year of their associate product management program. And from there, I really just kind of fell in love with the role. You kind of bridge this gap between technical knowledge and development, and then kind of business use cases and solving things for the customer. It's just really interesting. And so for the past year, I've been part of the full-time program. It's rotational. Every 8 months, you switch to a different part of the company, different teams, different projects. So 8 months, I was working on some intelligent applications for customer service. So when agents are chatting, can we look at their chat? Can we look at the text? Can we use natural language processing to predict things about the case? Like maybe what's the product that's defective? What's the severity of the issue? And then for the past 4 months, I've been on this kind of quirky team. It's a free online learning platform for business skills, soft skills, technical skills. And so that's kind of interesting because it's like a consumer product in an enterprise. And so we're thinking about how do we help people learn? How do we use data analysis to understand people's goals when they're learning and then to deliver them the right content at the right time? So it's super interesting, and I'm really excited to share more about my experience and answer your questions today.
Thank you so much, Chris. And that's a really interesting product that you're working at. I'm sure our attendees would love to hear more about it. Moving next, type down in the chat how excited are you for our panelists, like in the scale of 1 to 10. Is it 1, 2, 3, or even more than 10? So moving next, our next panelist that we have is Athena. So Athena, would love to hear your journey into product management. Go for it.
Hi everyone, I'm Athena at Microsoft. So I also knew about PM pretty late, and I didn't realize that I was kind of working as a product manager before I even know that. So in my sophomore year, I led an oral history documentary project where I kind of start from the fundraising, recruiting team members, and then produced a documentary. And then junior year, I led a translation project, also starting from like no budget, no one at all, to translate the whole Harvard CS50, very famous online course, into another language. So it was kind of by accident that I stumbled upon this. And also I did some kind of technical consulting in the college. I work as, I build websites for for small businesses, and also provide pro bono services to nonprofits. I was kind of being a PM without even knowing that. And when I found out this role, I was like, oh my God, I actually get paid for doing what I'm doing anyway. So yeah, I'm super grateful that the role like this exists, and like for someone who is kind of like a jack of all trade, who are just interested in so many things, like there is actually a very like promising career track for me.
Definitely. And I think most of us here on the call agree that product is something that we have come across by mistake or by a luck of chance. But I'm pretty sure all of us are very thankful for that. So for our next panelist, it's David Kai. David, tell us a bit about how you ended up being a product manager.
Yeah, my path was actually pretty similar to Chris's. I studied computer science all through school. All my internships were software engineering focused. And I didn't really think that I would become a PM until very late in the process. What happened for me was during my senior year, I was working on this side project. And originally it was this technical side project, just to use a Twilio API actually. But what happened was that the use case that I stumbled upon, it caught on with people at the school, right? My friends started using it. And then the friends of my friends started using it, and it kind of spread within the school, to the point where I was getting, feature requests or prioritization issues, like these sorts of questions that you don't really get to ask and think about during the course of a normal CS assignment, right? Like if you're given malloc, for example, you're not really allowed to question the spec all that much. So that was my first foray into, what I then realized was the role of a product manager, and it kind of uncover this interest that I had in consumer tech and asking these user problems and focusing on these issues. So that's when I started applying to Apm programs. I was very lucky that I got the interview, and even luckier that I got the role. Yeah, and it's been a great time at Yahoo since. My first year in the program, I was on what's called the identity team. It's more of an internal kind of back-end central tech type organization. About a month ago, I rotated onto my second rotation team, which is the Yahoo News team, where I am, taking on a totally different role. It's consumer facing this time. It's an app, and it's a totally different set of problems, which is one of the great things about a rotational program. And it's been this wildly different experience that has been incredibly gratifying and provided a lot of learning so far.
Sounds good. Definitely seems like a lot is going on with your career. And I've personally followed David on LinkedIn since a while, and I definitely recommend all of our audience to follow our speakers because they give really good advices overall, just as PM career or in any career that you are. Our next panelist we have is Jerry, who is an APM intern. So I think many of us are in call are looking to apply for internships and looking how we can benefit from PM internships. So Jerry, take it away.
Hey everyone, name is Jerry. So my path's actually pretty interesting. So I came into college studying biology. So my major is actually regenerative biology. And I didn't add computer science on until very late in the game. So hopefully I can share some of that experience. I actually got pulled into tech because in my senior year of high school, before I graduated, I started a project to kind of help students in my school find scholarships and get access to opportunities, because we came from a very public and very large high school without much guidance. There was a huge student to guidance counselor ratio. And so as I started this project, I eventually met another student online who was doing something similar in California. We decided to team up and make our solution a bit more, increase the reach of what we were trying to do. And we eventually found out that we were helping more students than we thought. There was a lot of value coming out of the platform we created. So we kind of kept up with it. And we eventually turned into an edtech startup, a nonprofit called PeerLift. And we actually continue to run it today. We just launched a scholarship last week and gave out $10,000 to students. So that was an awesome experience for me. But kind of getting to build out PeerLift was the reason why I learned CS in the first place, because we had all these features and stuff I wanted to build. And I said, hey, we need to actually be able to build this. We can't always be relying on like finding our friends to code for us. So I learned to code for that originally. And then I realized, oh, tech is actually super interesting. It's super impactful. And maybe I can actually like have some of the social impact that I want through tech. So I kind of discovered PM last summer while I was on Google's Bold Immersion program. And I figured this is the perfect interaction between getting to build things, between focusing on the overall broad impact. And PM seemed like the perfect thing to me. So I got sucked in, kind of figured out all the stuff that I had to do the interview, put my resume, and then landed on the Google APM internship. So definitely happy to speak on the experience of figuring out about PM late, figuring out about CS late in the game, and then kind of pivoting and preparing for all the interview stuff that you have to do for internships. Glad to be here, guys.
Wow, that's amazing, Jerry. Like, it's amazing how you started out something else also on the side. And as Grace mentioned in the chat, like a lot of these APM and new grad PM programs look for an X factor in you. So try to work on those side projects, passion projects, because you are also benefiting yourself out of it, apart from doing something better for the society or maybe the user that you're trying to solve your problem for. And next up, we have Melanie. And Melanie, I know you have had also a different path into products. So would love to hear your journey into product management.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Melanie. I come from France, as someone noted in the chat. So I did my undergrad over there and management of information system, actually. I was going to do a career in like IT consulting, which I started back in France. But I decided that I was lacking a lot of the technical skills. I felt that I needed to be more like a proficient IT consultant. So I decided to do a master in computer science, which I did here in the US. And when I moved to the US, it opened my eyes into like a whole new world of technology, which we don't really have in France. Like the product manager role is not something that we really have in France, except maybe on the startup scene. So it opened my eyes to all of these. And I was like, oh, that's super interesting. Like that's exactly how I imagined my career to be. And I didn't even know there was a position and a name for it and something I could do right away. And so I was very surprised. And I was at this point very late in the game. I would say like that was April of the end of my master's degree. And so I was like, oh, I cannot really get a position at this point. I always knew I wanted to do an MBA in my life at some point and get more business focused. So I got this opportunity to stay at Georgia Tech to do my MBA right after my master's degree, which I did. So it gave me like a lot of extra skills that are very useful for product management, as well as giving me like extra time to work on breaking into product. And second mistake I actually made is that I thought PM recruitment was, oh, you know, internship, or like, oh, they start recruiting in January of the year. And so I completely didn't look at all the applications. And like when in November, I was like, okay, I want to apply to PM roles at Google, at LinkedIn, and everywhere. Everything was already closed. So I actually got an internship as a technical program manager here at LinkedIn. And I absolutely fell in love with the culture at LinkedIn. I was like, okay, I'm going to do everything in my power to come back, but this time as a PM. And so I re-interviewed, passed all the APM interview for LinkedIn, and I joined back this February. and I'm working on the jobs team. So LinkedIn jobs, when you click on LinkedIn jobs, that's my team. And I work especially with like the small and medium businesses on how they can post jobs on LinkedIn, which has been very, very grateful to be able to do this during this pandemic and try to find solutions for everyone to still find jobs. And so I work especially with the AI teams. I work a lot in AI in terms of building the models to recommend the jobs that are the most useful for you. And I work also on the pricing models to make pricing models give more value to our customers. So yeah, that's my little journey into product.
Amazing, Melanie. I think it's really relatable that how you went about to get that role, because initially, as you said, like the roles were closed or the opportunity wasn't there. So I would say that's also a lesson for all our attendees here, that if you don't get that one product role or one product internship, don't be disheartened. Maybe like dream a little for a few days, but you know that there's still possibilities out there. So keep working on those again and again, because you need only one yes. You not need all the yeses. And as Grace mentioned in the chat, feel free to check out the job board channel on Product Buds. We try to post all the new PM roles opening up, APM interns role opening up. So definitely check that out. And moving forward, we have now a few questions related to how was your experience at APM and recruiting. So to start off, is the APM or new grad PM role the way that you thought it would be? Was there anything that you did not expect? Any of our panelists want to answer that? Okay, so we have Melanie here. Melanie, what's your answer?
Yeah, actually, I thought it would be more structured maybe, and I would have been more support, I would say. I've been very surprised by the level of autonomy I was given, and the fact that all my cross-functional partner already thought of me as like a PM and just listened to me and trusted me in terms of making the right decision for our product. And I was very surprised because I think like coming out as a new grad, I was not expecting to be given that much responsibility right away. And that's definitely something, I love it, but it's very surprising in the beginning. And sometimes you're like, maybe I need someone to hold my hand a little bit more in terms of giving me, am I making the right decision or not for the product? So yeah, I would say that that's maybe something LinkedIn related. I don't know if every panelist can relate to experiences like this, but definitely we're treated like full-blown PM right away, and a lot of people don't even know in companies what the A in front of PM means. They're just like, yeah, like you're just a PM. We expect you to do like the PM job like every other PM we know. So yeah.
Definitely, that's true. If you relate to any of our panelists, use the hashtag and use the name. If you relate to Melanie's answer, use hashtag Melanie. So we also have Athena here. Athena, would you want to unmute yourself and talk about this question?
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I second Melina. I'm also get thrown straight into a highly visible product as someone like who just joined for like 2 months. So my feature is on Microsoft.com, which brings billions of revenues every month. And I was I was enabling the SEO, analytics, and tagging on Microsoft.com and the future the MarTech like product. So it was definitely a surprise to me how much trust the company puts into even the new PMs. And I think my team also makes it not stressful. So my manager told me that you are empowered to make reversible decision. So that gives me the support and at the same time kind of the confidence to kind of tread my own path. And sometimes when I'm with like stakeholders and I got strong pushback, my manager will also say, "Don't worry, like you're doing the right thing. This is part of a PM's life, and you have my back." So yeah, that's and I also have people asking me, "Oh, how do you feel like being a PM in a company of like 100,000 people? Like, do you feel like a cog in the machine?" I cannot say for others, but I don't feel that at all. My project is highly visible, and also Microsoft has a very good culture in kind of including everyone. So it's not like, oh, you work on a very visible project, then you are more likely to get promoted. That's not how we measure the success of the employees. So yeah.
Definitely makes sense. David, let's hear from you.
Yeah, first off, I want to second what everyone said so far. These are absolutely true, aspects of being kind of thrown into an APM program. For me, coming from having no PM experience at all, I had this kind of, I guess, a stereotype of what a PM did, right? And I kind of thought that to some degree it was, you would get into a room with other PMs and you would get in there with some designers, like you would all draw out an app on the whiteboard. And then, come a week later, like everyone would have built this app and it'd be this amazing thing. And like, there's some bit of that, right? Like there's some sort of product ideation and strategy that goes on. But there's also a very big chunk of your work that is kind of more nuts and bolts, more mechanical, right? It's influencing people. It's taking out the trash, so to speak. It's writing up the docs, writing up the meeting notes, these sorts of everyday tasks that you as the PM for a team have to take care of just to make sure that the team functions properly, right? It's not all glamorous. It's not all just giving presentations on stage and coming up with these brilliant ideas. There's a lot of grunt work, so to speak, involved in the role. And I guess I just want to clarify that, as a PM, that, you are in charge of the product, but you still have to help your team, in a lot of different ways, and make sure you're getting it for the right reasons, right? It's not for visibility, it's not for glamour, it's not for pride or ego or anything like that. It's really just kind of in service of the team and the product.
Definitely, and very useful advice. I'd tell my attendees to take some notes here because hearing these things, you can also figure out what people are looking for in a PM interview or an APM interview. Last up for this question, we have Jerry. Let's hear from you.
Yep, two quick ads actually. First of all, huge plus one being thrown in the deep end. That happens a lot. And huge plus one also to big ambiguous problems where you have a lot of freedom to do kind of whatever you think is best. And so you having to defend your ideas. Something that I didn't expect coming into the internship was I thought that it would all be about releasing a feature to end users that some people are going to get to use at the end of the day. But there's also work streams you'll get to work on where sometimes it's not all about developing a feature. Maybe sometimes it's about creating long-term strategy, especially for hardware products that have longer release schedules. And also like deciding to not launch something can be even more valuable insight for the team. So it's not all about how can I get this to users as fast as possible. Sometimes it's about what does the product need? Should we do this? And then maybe you figure out that we don't do this, and that's really useful for the company as well.
Absolutely, and that's totally correct. I feel you guys have that experience, and to understand that when you're interviewing for these roles, or if you're hired as an APM PM, also means like there are a lot of responsibilities on you. So type in the chat the most you relate with, either with our speaker backgrounds or with the answer that they said. Use their name, use their hashtags. So next up is the question that has been asked a lot in the product bits community. And you guys know that when you are interviewing for an APM role, PM role, or even applying, there are so many other applicants who are doing this. And it's really difficult when number of roles are so minimum and number of applicants for so many for recruiters and hiring managers to evaluate you. So what would be one tip from you guys that you would say helps you to stand out in the APM or new grad PM interview process? And I know like some of you have also been on the other hand recruiting other people. So what would be your one tip for this thing? Okay, let's hear it from Jerry.
I'll add a very quick thing. I think that mock interviews are probably the most important thing that you can do if you have to index on one single thing. And with mock interviews, I think that structure within that is probably the most important thing. So making sure that you kind of are allowing whoever you're talking to and interviewing with to see how you're thinking, but structuring it for them and giving them recaps of, okay, so this is what we're doing, this is what we've agreed on, and this is kind of where we are. So signpost as often as you can. And then one piece that I found of advice that I found that was useful for me was that, hold on, I'll come back with this actually, I just lost my train of thought.
No problem, Jerry. I think that's a good tip, and mock interviews is
I can share a little bit. So for me, if there's one advice, I would say critical thinking. critical thinking in the interview, but also in the interview prep. So now we have amazing communities, a lot of us. Like everyone will be reading the same PM books. Everyone will be having kind of the similar mock interviews. So then you have to really dig deeper and think about what makes you unique. And maybe this is ambiguous. Let me give you an example. So for example, behavior questions. Lots of people think behavior question is chill, is easy to answer, not compared to like coding questions. It's not hard to answer a behavioral question, but it's very hard to leave a deep impression and let the interviews get the message you want to convey. So when people come to me to ask for advice for behavior question, I always tell them that don't start with what you want to say. Start with what kind of impression you want to leave on the interviewers and kind of work your way back. There are kind of 4 different dimensions when you're answering behavior questions. What you say, what you don't say, how you say what you say, and how the interviewer here kind of perceive. You can only, like the last one, you don't have full control. So you're only influencing through the first 3. And yeah, so this is just an example of like really thinking very deep about what does that mean? Like what is behavior question for? Why people ask us interview questions? Since we are all using the same kind of interview question framework, then what is the unique value I bring to the table?
Definitely agree with that. You have to understand that each question asked at you in the interview has some purpose. It's not for like just anything. So make sure you answer that uniquely in your own way. Next up, we want to hear from Chris on this question.
Yeah, and I want to second what Athena and Darsh just said. Every question you get in an interview has a purpose. So really dig into the question, figure out, is this a test of my ability to communicate? Is it a test of my ability to think analytically? And then I think just a great piece of advice generally is, you know, the product management role bridges a bunch of different kind of philosophies and like functional areas, you know. Sometimes it's design, sometimes it's engineering, sometimes it's working with marketing. But I think the perfect product manager doesn't exist. There's very few people who nail every single one of those. So I think kind of acknowledging where your skills are, and then learning how to communicate with people in other functions so they can help you where you kind of have blind spots. Because really product is a very, very collaborative role.
Yes, absolutely agreed to that. David, let's hear from you.
Yeah, this one's a little bit different from the tips I've been given so far. It might be a little bit of a hipster tip, but something I love to say is be keyed in to the tech world and tech industry right now, right? Like being able to understand what are the trends of the FANG companies, the big players in the market, really helps put your answers and like the products that you design over the interview into a context, right? It makes it shows that you really know what's going on. You're invested in the industry, and that you're not just kind of designing this kind of magical abstract thing. Having these things that you can kind of bring in and color in, you know, the background of your interview answers, really does just add that little bit of nuance. And no one's going to ask you, compare the latest iPhone to the latest Samsung phone, right? These aren't the sort of questions that you'll get. But still having the knowledge of like, you know, where is Apple going? Like what kind of challenges are Apple facing or Samsung facing? You know, what's going on with this Apple versus Epic thing right now? These sorts of, just having this sort of context around your answer really does just kind of subtly bring your answer to the next level, in my opinion.
Definitely agree to that. And that's also something I think attendees can keep in mind, that always keep up to the trends that are happening in the technology world. That just helps you to frame your answer in a better way and get some ideas. So let's hear from Melanie on this question.
Sure. Obviously, +1 to everything that has been said. I remember having a question like, do you think Netflix should raise their prices? So like definitely keep in trend. Otherwise, a question like this would be very hard. I would also say completely be yourself and don't be afraid to be bold. I just want to share, during my LinkedIn interview, I was asked this classic question, okay, what's a product you use and how would you improve it? Like very classic APM question. And the interviewer said something, she was like, if you don't have a product in mind, I can give you the product I'm working on. And I was like, you know what? I've answered this question so many times and prepared it like so often as everyone else. Can we work on your own product and define how we can improve it together? And so just being like very bold and proving like in an interview that in just 30 minutes, I could share like, okay, analyze a product, see what could be done on it, and just not repeat like, she must have heard so many other interviews where people were saying the exact same apps and how they could improve following the exact same framework. And if you can just put this framework, the same framework, but on a product you're not really familiar with, it shows very different skills and could you set you apart from like other candidates. And just, she will remember your name in the end of the day. And that's just my little 2 cents on this.
Definitely. That is really interesting how you went on the bold idea, because that absolutely helps the interviewer to see and to have you as somebody who stand out from the normal process, right? Like as Melanie mentioned, everyday same answers. If you go for something else, they'll remember you. So lastly, on this question, I think Jerry has something to say. So let's hear it.
Yeah, I remember the last thing I wanted to add. So very, very important. Make sure that both you and your interviewer are talking during the entire interview. Don't let them get bored and just kind of listen to you talk, and bring them into the conversation where possible. And I think the goal for this is I always try to get it so that the interview feels like me and the interviewer working together to solve whatever question that they're asking. If you can get it there, I think you're solid.
Definitely agree to that. So our next question is, what role has been your saving grace? So what area are you weakest as a product manager and have relied on the team to help you out? And how did that go for you? So let's hear it from David.
Yeah, it's funny because one of the areas, it actually ended up being one of the areas that I thought I had in the bag. I thought like the project management aspect, the timing, managing blockers, making sure everything's moving forward, these sorts of things. I thought I had the skills to manage that. And it turns out that the volume of information and the amount of decisions that happened at the same time was, a lot more than I could handle initially. But being able to lean on the team, being able to go to your eng leads for context on a question, to refresh your knowledge, leaning on individual engineers who own a feature, right, to bring you up to speed on what's been happening, where are the bugs, where are they, these sorts of things, and also just collaborating with external PMs, right, seeing what they have, what they're working on, if they can refresh your memory, these sorts of things, has really been helpful, right? Just leaning on your team and kind of distributing knowledge of the project and the status across the team, instead of trying to internalize it all and like hold it all yourself, where you're bound to let something slip through the cracks.
Totally agreed on that, David. Let's hear it from Chris on this.
Yeah, I think for me, my situation, I'm in a rotational program. So coming in as the new person and only staying there for kind of less than 9 months, it's difficult to really be technically knowledgeable fast. So I think for me, my greatest partner is always my engineering manager. Kind of when I'm working on a project, and there are inherent complexities on the technical side. He's really just a great point of contact to understand like kind of who are the other people who are dealing with in the system. Like maybe we own the front end, but who owns the back end? And who's the right person to have that conversation with to get the outcomes with the product? So I think, yeah, it's just a matter of kind of identifying your kind of weaknesses, the skills that you don't have, and the people around you who fill the gaps.
+1 on that, Chris. Next up, we have Melanie.
Yeah, I think +1 to all of this, definitely all my cross-functional partners, they know their area way more than I will ever know myself. And especially my I work with a data scientist, especially after we launch a new product. So we launch a totally new product, MVP, like just to test it out and see what will happen. And I realized that even though I defined like the metrics and everything that I wanted to take track once we launched, actually reading these metrics and putting sense into what they were meaning, I had no idea. So I was looking at the metrics and I was like, I don't think we're as successful as we wanted to be. And then my data scientists were like, are you crazy? Like for this, and this reason, it's functioning way better than we imagine. And just like relying on him to tell me and put sense in all these different metrics and what they would mean. And especially like which metrics were telling us, okay, this is our next area of focus. We can actually even improve the product if we focused on what this exact metric is saying. And so my data scientist partner has been like a real saving grace for me in terms of like making sure we're going into the right direction.
That is absolutely true. And to all our attendees, identify that how you in your experiences have figured out a way to collaborate with other people when you didn't have those skills, because as a PM you're supposed to lead the team or lead the product that you're working on. So that's a very definite skill you should have. So if that pops out in your resume, that's always a plus one. So this is our last question for the predefined questions. Then we'll be moving on Slido, so make sure you ask your questions there. So we talked a bit about interviewing, that how do you stand out in the interview process. If there was one thing you wish you'd know when you were applying for these roles, what would you say that would be? And this can be a really quick one tip if you all can share something. Okay, we have two people. Okay, let's hear it from Jerry.
I'll give you the internship perspective because I had a lot of time to think about this. If I could go back and redo this, I would, two things that I would do. On applying end, I would, instead of mass applying to a bunch of roles, I would use LinkedIn, form relationships, apply with a referral, and try to get in touch with a recruiter in some way. And on the actual like, interview end, I think I would index 70% on a platform called Exponent PM, which has been, I think, the best experience for me in terms of interview prep. And then I would do a little bit of Decode and Conquer. And then lastly, I would just kind of read up generally on cracking the PM interview, that book. One specific thing that I've been doing because I actually have to interview again for internships and full-time roles now. One thing that I'm doing is I'm doing what I call interview starts. So this is when I just put a timer on for 8 minutes. I'll look at a question that I'm finding through whatever platform, usually Exponent, and then I'll just try to run through the entire case super fast in maybe like 8 minutes. Because putting that time pressure really forces you to figure out what you know, what you don't know, and where your strengths and weaknesses are, and then you can figure out like targeted plans to improve on your weaknesses. So that's what I would do.
I hope everybody's taking notes. So let's hear it from Melanie on this.
Yeah, sure. I say one very quick advice is that realize that every APM process is very different, one from the other. And so learn and know what's expected of you in every process. LinkedIn doesn't have technical interviews, for example, but Google has like one technical interview. And so you would have to prepare individually for each process. And so make sure you actually know what's expected of you and tweak your preparation for each process based on like what you know. And if you don't know, if the interviewer doesn't let you know in advance or the recruiter doesn't let you know, don't be afraid to ask. I went into like all my processes with a clear understanding on the type of interviews I would have, just because like I asked if it was not provided automatically to me.
Makes sense. Next, do we want to hear from Athena on this? Athena, go for it.
Okay, sure, yeah. I wouldn't say this is just for PM interview, but also to be a successful PM, because that's the end goal. I would say read a lot, read very deeply into the PM, don't just read PM interview questions, read about PM as the discipline, and also read very broadly, not tech for sure, business for sure, but philosophy, social science, humanity, like because like think about it, even if you are working on a product, ultimately you are serving human beings, you are working with human beings, so you need to have in-depth understanding of the kind of the, how to say, the human nature. So for me, when I'm thinking about consumer products, I would start with thinking about what basic human needs my products serve, and then work my way over there, and then think about how to build the features to best serve those human needs. I have an article on Medium called Design Spotify for the Blind, where I start with why music is important for human beings. Check it out.
Thank you so much, Athena, on that. So that ends our first, major half of our event. If you liked listening to our speakers, use their names, use their hashtags, and type it in the chat so that our speakers know whatever they're saying, it's actually useful for you guys. For the next part of the event, we'll be moving over to Slido, and I'd ask my teammate Henrika to share her screen so that we can go on Slido. Panelists, just one note, for the interest in time so that we can cover maximum questions, we'll only hear from one panelist per question so that we can cover more. Okay. So starting off, we have what would help the most for a non-technical major to know when landing PM interviews and steps to take to brand ourselves. How can we hustle to get those interviews? Panelists, feel free to raise your hands to answer the question.
I'll put an article in the chat to save time.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so check out Athena's article and her Medium blog. This has an article. She has an article for this topic on this. The next question we have is, how do you ask for a referral for an APM program when you don't know anyone in the company? Any speakers want to speak on that?
I'm also writing an article on this question. Just really quick, I think there's a mistake that people make is that getting a referral will help recruiters better discover qualified candidates. But if you are not a qualified candidates, getting a referral will not help you become one. So yeah.
I think one of the panelists also touched on this earlier, which is leveraging the alumni network on LinkedIn. Personally, I've found that to be the most successful way when, I don't know, someone in the company reaching out to an alumni and using that search feature on LinkedIn helped a lot.
Absolutely. So next, we have a question of cloud here for international students. Would you guys be able to share about if these programs are open to international students? Let's hear it from Melanie on this.
Yeah, so I'm international as well. I won't be able to answer, I think, for this cycle specifically because of like the world we live in and the problems, like everything that's happening. So I think none of us really can know this year what's going to happen. I will say in general, it's like a PM position is like safe for like H1B, as long as you have like, most companies will want 3 years of OPT. So like if you have like the STEM extension, most companies are looking for these 3 years to give you more chances. And I can only talk for LinkedIn, but for example, even in PM, in engineering position, LinkedIn is not going to fire you if you don't get picked in H1B. They're just going to send you to like another office for a couple years and continue applying. And PMs are like, obviously they apply for H1B, they apply for your green card. I think most of the big companies, they treat PM as like engineers in terms of how they recruit international students. So that's my take. And I never heard any company specifically for PM not recruiting internationals. And if they do, they will put it like in big letters. That's my take on this.
Totally agreed with you, Melanie. So our next question is, did any of you interview for a consulting role? And if, I guess the question means if you did, like, how would you compare a consulting and a PM role? Okay, seems like none of our panelists actually did a consulting role, but I can speak okay, Jerry did actually. Let's hear it from Jerry.
Yep. So actually, before I jumped into PM, I did a bit of consulting through a college club that we have at our school. I'm trying to make sure I get right what carried over and what were some of the differences. I know definitely. So for speaking specifically for Google's internship, in my consulting interviews, I never had to go into technical considerations. I never really had to. There was less of an emphasis on building for the end user in mind. It was more of like a strategy. So I think that the similarity that I found is in my consulting interviews, they most resembled strategy questions that you might get on a PM interview, but PM interviews tend to then index more on users um, and actual like and figuring out if you even should be building what you're building. Um, so in short, I think that consulting cases will prep you for strategy questions, but product design questions and potentially technical questions you'll have to kind of do in a PM setting on your own.
Yep, totally agreed on that. So next question we have is kind of an interesting one, and I'd love to hear you guys give some thoughts on this. What is some of the worst advice you have gotten on your path to PM, and what should somebody totally not do if they're planning to go for APM or new grad PM roles?
I can hop in for this one. I think something that I think is a common misconception is I'm a manager as a product manager. Like I have the authority, I can make decisions kind of unilaterally, but that's kind of entirely false, really. You do have opportunities to advocate for decisions, but you spend a lot of your time inquiring as well, asking other people questions and getting their opinions. I think there's this entrepreneurial quote that's like, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men and the wood to build it. Instead, teach them to yearn for the ocean. So I think PM is a lot of kind of motivating people, helping them understand the big picture so they can be autonomous and make their own decisions.
Yep, that sounds completely understandable, Chris. And I've had this experience myself as well. Any other panelists want to share their thoughts on this? Okay, sounds good. So our next question is: do you wish that you worked as a software engineer before becoming a product manager?
I can take this one. I don't know if I can answer if I wish, because I did, do a lot of software engineering internships before this. And I think it's incredibly useful, right? Most of the time you're PMing a software product and being familiar with the terminology at a basic level, but being able to just have a conversation with your engineers without every single step of it being explained to you, both gives you some cred with the engineers and also just makes things go a little bit more efficiently, right? You guys are all on the same page to begin with. Those conversations move faster, and on the whole, it's not necessary, but on the whole, having that is kind of a bit of a boost, so to speak, if you find yourself in the role.
Yep, that sounds about right. So the next question we have is: as a product designer with a less technical background, do you suggest building your skill set niche further in design? And what would be your tips on pivoting into APM or PM roles?
I can try to answer that one. I think especially in big companies, if you're like a product designer already, you would have the chance to work with like product manager and try to like learn more, put coffee chat with product manager, try to understand exactly their role. I've seen also people in other functions shadow a PM for a day or something like this to understand the different roles, and see if you have opportunities to transition inside the same company. LinkedIn has a part of the APM program is actually LinkedIn employees that were in other positions and that want to transition into product. And so they start back at like the APM level. And I would say, yeah, try to define where your skill set is right now and what you understand of like the PM skill set lies, and build on your free time or like even at work, try to take increased responsibilities to bridge this gap and actually show that you're working on bridging this skill set gap. And I think definitely it can be done in your work, in your current work environment, and trying to, yeah, transition yourself inside work. It might be easier, in my view, in my opinion, to do it like inside your company rather than trying to pivot externally in the industry and brand yourself like totally new to a totally new company.
Thank you, Melanie, for mentioning that, because I think that also touches on one of our questions on screen, that how would you pivot into a product management role inside a company if you don't have a technical background? And to Melanie's point, if you can do something with your current skill set and get your foot in the door, then you can slowly build up on your skill set to make that transfer. So even if you don't have technical background, there are lots of possibilities to get into product, and one common path is you take up some other role and then make your network in the company, talk to people, and then shift into a product management role. Now, one question we have, which is also a very popular one, would any of you be willing to share that? How was the interview prep process for you? I know Jerry mentioned a bit about this, but if anybody else wants to share their experience on how they prepared for PM interviews. Okay. David, do you want to take this one?
I can give some thoughts. Although you know, the way I prepared, I would not recommend anyone prepare. Mine was very haphazard, and you know, I didn't attend panels like this. I didn't speak to PMs. So everything you're doing here is already more than I did. But I think something to keep in mind is being confident enough in your approach to interviews that you can do it subconsciously, right? Something that I see a lot is that people will have the notions of a framework coming into the interview, but then when the interview actually starts, they kind of lose their form, right? They forget the goals they've set out in the beginning. Maybe they don't finish thinking through one of the features, and so you kind of have this haphazard, incomplete, random product that you build over the course of the interview. And so really working through it enough times, getting enough reps to the point where you don't crack under pressure. You know, you can execute it, you know, on any sort of question. Like, you know, you can devote your time to thinking about what actually is the content I want to put into it, rather than how do I want to, like, you know, what is the form and the vehicle that I want to convey it in. I think getting to that point is a good benchmark for succeeding in interviews.
Yep, that sounds about right. And to add to David's point, it's also about uh, giving that right amount of balance between preparing for interviews and also having that fresh mindset. Because the possibility that a company has chose you for an interview is because they are interested into your personality, into your background. They just don't want the same answers that you can get from books. They want to see how you sprinkle your personality into those problems. And we are almost about time, so I think most of the common questions have been covered. Let me just go through this one. So one last question for our panel would be, how will the pandemic change the way companies hire? For example, I heard due to hiring freezes, LinkedIn won't be recruiting an APM class this year. Do you have any thoughts on that, like Melanie or any of our other panelists?
Yeah, I think I feel like I have to answer that question. I actually don't know. So LinkedIn is still on a hiring slowdown. Let's say it like this: hiring slowdown. I know that this internal APM program I was talking before did not happen right now. They're still planning to like recruit internal APMs starting next year. But I haven't heard anything for like the external and new grads. So I have no idea. And usually LinkedIn's recruitment for APM starts like early September. So all I would say is like keep your eyes out. But I know as much as like you guys on this call about it. And it might change because working in jobs at LinkedIn, we've seen like the number of jobs posted obviously go down. So in general, in the industry, we might see like a little bit less roles opened. But like I've been on the product bud Slack and I've seen like companies also opening APM programs. So definitely there's like some companies that will maybe slow down APM recruitment and other companies that will like explode and like take a chance on younger talent.
That's definitely true. And to that point, check out Product Buzz job board to keep updated on those job openings. David, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is just an idea, and I don't know this for sure, but I have a feeling that, for those of you who aren't applying directly in this cycle, a lot of companies will be looking at how did you respond during the pandemic, right? I mean, some people, you have family situations, you have environmental situations where, you have to focus all your effort in surviving, and that's, if that's you, that's very important. But for others, right, this could be a windfall of time, a windfall of energy, and a giant paradigm shift in the way that everyone is thinking about everything. Right. So seeing how did you navigate this? What did you do during it? And how did you kind of use this negative situation to your advantage when it's something that affected everyone? Just kind of seeing how you respond to that and how you came out of it. I have a feeling will be something that is probably not explicitly, but kind of in the back of people's heads in the upcoming cycles.
That is absolutely true. Like, if you are somebody who's not sure how to go about this, try to take up some job, any job, because it matters how you pick up this. It's not only about big tech, it's not only about PM roles, it's about any jobs. And we are almost at time. Oh, actually, we are at time. So, one last thing, I'd like to hand it off to Grace. I think she had some questions for our panelists, like a concluding question, maybe, Grace.
Yeah, thank you, Darsh, and thank you to our panelists for such a valuable series. Actually, I myself am recruiting for APM roles right now, and there was so much knowledge and insights that were dropped during this panel that I took away from it. So I'm super excited to put all of that information to use and make it work in my process. And before we wrap up, I just want to tell everyone on the call that APM programs are 100% fantastic. You should all work towards applying to them if you feel like you're a good candidate. But just like Darsh was saying, if you somehow end up not getting any interviews for APM roles and you're having a hard time, just know that firstly, be easy on yourself because these roles are insanely competitive, and there are a lot of factors outside of your control, like the economic situation, but also try for other PM roles too. Last year, I applied to the Salesforce APM internship. I interviewed and I did not make it. I didn't get to the final round and I was really devastated, but I kept on applying to other Salesforce internships. And eventually another recruiter there picked me up for an alternative PM internship outside of the APM intern cohort. And so there are lots of opportunities out there that you can capitalize on in addition to APM programs. So for sure, you all are well on your ways though, because you're already spending so much time here with us, listening to these amazing APMs and program managers speaking about their experiences. And lastly, if you learn something from this event, post on LinkedIn about what you learned and tag all of our speakers. Why? Because it's going to show recruiters and hiring managers that you're actively seeking PM roles, and your post is going to be commented on by all of our panelists. And inside all of our panelists' LinkedIn networks are hiring managers, are product managers, right? And they're going to see your post on their feed. And so you never know what kind of opportunity can come. So please, post on LinkedIn what you learned, tag our panelists, tag our Product Buds team. And we're so looking forward to seeing you all at our next event.
Thank you so much, Grace. And to top it off, that is what Product Buds is all about. Like, we are a community, we are not a company, or we are not trying to earn anything out of it. Like, all of us have faced this problem when we were recruiting, and I'm definitely sure our panelists also did. So it's a community. If you feel like something's not working, reach out to us or just post it on there. And definitely we have an amazing pool of mentors as well. So they'll be absolutely ready to help you. And to top it off, any of our panelists, do you have any concluding comments for us or the people who are attending this session today?
I would
Okay.
just say good luck to everyone. I'm personally cheering you all on. I found about PM like basically a year ago, and I made a very hard pivot in. So I'm cheering all of you guys on. I hope that you're able to kind of find your way to.
Yeah, similarly,
Yeah,
I got a PM job in the middle of a pandemic, and I'm an international student, and I have no PM internship. I have never worked at a big tech company before. So if you dream big, you will find a way to get there.
yeah, and if I could say anything, I would say don't be discouraged if things don't work out as you expected. What might seem like failure now, you'll realize in some time that it's a learning opportunity. So if you don't get the interview didn't go well, get some feedback, ask the recruiter, ask your interviewers, what are some skills gaps that I can overcome? How do you think I could better be suited for this role in the future? So keep your heads up, keep learning, and you'll get there.
Yeah, good luck to everyone and keep up like the positivity. And I know these times are like very hard, especially if you live in like the Bay Area these days. It's like it can be like very hard and very depressing, but like keep up and be positive and join these kind of groups, get support. And I think like this is my advice and my last word is like keep up the support and everything that can lift you up during these difficult times for everyone.
I think Chris and Melanie said it beautifully. Keep it up, keep working, and just being here is a great step. So good luck to everybody.
Thank you so much, Chris, Athena, David, Jerry, and Melanie. I know it was a Saturday morning, but thanks again for taking out some time for all of us and for the PB family. If you liked this session, post on LinkedIn or maybe type down in Product Buds Workspace, and we'll definitely love to hear from you. So thank you all of you, and hope all of you have an amazing weekend. Goodbye.